Numbers 33. These are the journeys of the children of Israel, when they went out of the land of Egypt by their armies under the hand of Moses and Aaron. Moses wrote the starting points of their journeys by the commandment of Yahweh. These are their journeys according to their starting points. They traveled from Ramesses in the first month, on the 15th day of the first month. On the next day after the Passover, the children of Israel went out with a high hand in the sight of all the Egyptians, while the Egyptians were burying all their firstborn, whom Yahweh had struck among them. Yahweh also executed judgments on their gods. The children of Israel traveled from Ramesses, and encamped in Succos. They traveled from Succos, and encamped in Etham, which is in the edge of the wilderness. They traveled from Etham, and turned back to Pi-hahiroth, which is before Baal-zephon, and they encamped before Migdol. They traveled from before Hahiroth, and crossed through the middle of the sea into the wilderness. They went 3 days' journey in the wilderness of Etham, and encamped in Marah. They traveled from Marah, and came to Elim. In Elim, there were 12 springs of water and 70 palm trees, and they encamped there. They traveled from Elim, and encamped by the Red Sea. They traveled from the Red Sea, and encamped in the wilderness of Sin. They traveled from the wilderness of Sin, and encamped in Dophkah. They traveled from Dophkah, and encamped in Elush. They traveled from Elush, and encamped in Rephidim, where there was no water for the people to drink. They traveled from Rephidim, and encamped in the wilderness of Sinai. They traveled from the wilderness of Sinai, and encamped in Kibroth-Hattaavah. They traveled from Kibroth-Hattaavah, and encamped in Hazeroth. They traveled from Hazeroth, and encamped in Rithmah. They traveled from Rithmah, and encamped in Rimmon Perez. They traveled from Rimmon Perez, and encamped in Libnah. They traveled from Libnah, and encamped in Rissah. They traveled from Rissah, and encamped in Kehelatha. They traveled from Kehelatha, and encamped in Mount Shepher. They traveled from Mount Shepher, and encamped in Harada. They traveled from Harada, and encamped in Makaloth. They traveled from Makaloth, and encamped in Tahath. They traveled from Tahath, and encamped in Turah. They traveled from Turah, and encamped in Mithkah. They traveled from Mithkah, and encamped in Hashmanah. They traveled from Hashmanah, and encamped in Mosroth. They traveled from Mosroth, and encamped in Bene Jaakan. They traveled from Bene Jaakan, and encamped in Hor Haggidgad. They traveled from Hor Haggidgad, and encamped in Joppathah. They traveled from Joppathah, and encamped in Abrona. They traveled from Abrona, and encamped in Ezion-Geber. They traveled from Ezion-Geber, and encamped at Kadesh in the wilderness of Zin. They traveled from Kadesh, and encamped in Mount Hor, in the edge of the land of Edom. Aaron the priest went up into Mount Hor at the commandment of Yahweh and died there, in the 40th year after the children of Israel had come out of the land of Egypt, in the 5th month, on the 1st day of the month. Aaron was 123 years old when he died in Mount Hor. The Canaanite king of Arad, who lived in the south in the land of Canaan, heard of the coming of the children of Israel. They traveled from Mount Hor, and encamped in Zalmonah. They traveled from Zalmonah, and encamped in Punon. They traveled from Punon, and encamped in Obith. They traveled from Obith, and encamped in Iabarim, in the border of Moab. They traveled from Iam, and encamped in Dibon-Gad. They traveled from Dibon-Gad, and encamped in Almon-Diblathaim. They traveled from Almon-Diblathaim, and encamped in the mountains of Abarim, before Nebo. They traveled from the mountains of Abarim, and encamped in the plains of Moab by the Jordan at Jericho. They encamped by the Jordan, from Beth-Jeshimoth even to Abel-Shittim in the plains of Moab. Yahweh spoke to Moses in the plains of Moab by the Jordan at Jericho, saying, "Speak to the children of Israel, and tell them, when you pass over the Jordan into the land of Canaan, then you shall drive out all the inhabitants of the land from before you, destroy all their stone idols, destroy all their molten images, and demolish all their high places. You shall take possession of the land, and dwell therein, for I have given the land to you to possess it. You shall inherit the land by lot according to your families. To the larger groups you shall give a larger inheritance, and to the smaller you shall give a smaller inheritance. Wherever the lot falls to any man, that shall be his. You shall inherit according to the tribes of your fathers. But if you do not drive out the inhabitants of the land from before you, then those you let remain of them will be like pricks in your eyes and thorns in your sides. they will harass you in the land in which you dwell. It shall happen that as I thought to do to them, so I will do to you.
These are the journeys we take, crossing through valleys we make. Israel wandering in the night, following Yahweh, seeking light. Out from the land of pain, embracing your promise unchained. Can you feel the Spirit rise? Hear the echoes of the skies. In the paths we tread, we stand, singing praises hand in hand. From Maine, our hearts ignite. Across the sea we find our mind. In bitter waters we cry, to be where the palm trees sigh. Guided by fire through the dark, with each step we leave our mind. You feel the Spirit rise, hear the echoes of the skies. In the paths we tread, we stand, singing praises hand in hand. Journey's long, but for faith remains. Struggles bind, yet love sustains. Moses leads us through each fight. Together we'll reach our heights. Can you feel Spirit rise? Hear the echoes of the skies. In the paths we tread, we stand, sing praises hand in hand.
These are the journeys of the children. Oh, we rise. Yes, we'll rise. In of Egypt, oh, freedom in eyes. By the hand of Moses, under Yahweh's guiding light. They travel through the wilderness, searching for the bride. So bright. From Ramses we departed. Oh, the promise is so near. Every step we're closer, casting off our fear. Let us sing along, let us sing along. Through valleys deep, great we stand strong. Voices lift high in our heart song. Together we walk, we will carry on. The cops will keep the path unfolded, again battered down. In the wilderness of sin, and new patience we found. No, each camp is a milestone. A camp can dust for praise, with waters flowing in lanes. Oh, let us sing along, let us sing along. Through valleys deep, faith we stand strong. Voices lift high in our hearts song. Together we walk, we will carry on. We journey on with eyes on the land. Our victory's done. The path may be winding, our spirits run free. In Canaan's embrace, we just as He promised. Let us sing long, let us sing long. Through valleys deep, faith we stand strong. Voices lift high in our hearts strong. Together we walk, we will carry on.
Like, share, subscribe now.